Today was a very weird day for casting the Superman Man of Tomorrow movie. I'm going to talk about it. Also, my cat Mortimer not on my lap right now because he hates this movie because it probably isn't going to contain any cats. Supergirl, who traditionally has a cat, probably won't because she has Crypto. Superman doesn't have a cat. And Brainiac sometimes has a monkey, and I feel like James Gunn will not leave that out, so I hope the monkey makes it into the movie. But okay, very basic background info. Superman Man of Tomorrow, or just called Man of Tomorrow, although I have a feeling they'll add Superman onto it. James Gunn loves to change the titles of movies as they're working on them. It's going to come out in 2027. I believe it's about to start filming very soon. I'm recording this in April. Specifically, I'm recording this on Wednesday, April 8th at 10 at night. I'm only saying this because I'm trying to get this one done quickly because this one moves pretty quickly. I doubt we'll get an announcement this week, but with these, you never know. But okay. So this movie, it's a James Gunn movie. It's got most of the Superman cast back. Some of the other cast members, I believe Supergirl is going to be in this. I believe we know Jon Stewart, Green Lantern, is going to be in this. Probably some Peacemaker guys are going to be in this. It's not a Justice League movie, but it's sort of like a proto-Justice League movie. Probably because the name Justice League is so burnt by those two movies that the general audience didn't like. One, because it was just a watered-down, not as good version of the Avengers, and the other one because it was a very long movie that a lot of them didn't see. We aren't adding too many new characters to this movie. Obviously, Brainiac is going to be the main villain, played by Lars Eidinger. He's cool. I feel like he's been working out or something, posted on Instagram. Good for him. Brainiac doesn't have to be muscular, but sometimes he is. Sometimes he's a kind of skeletal robot. So, it could be a lot of different things. More than anything, I feel like Brainiac's supposed to kind of feel like Ultron does in the movie. Sometimes. He's got a little bit more personality than comic Ultron, and he can punch Superman if he has to. But we know that there's one other character, maybe another one that we don't know anything about. It seems like there might be one more somewhere down the line, though we know at least one more character is going to be added to this movie. It is a DC Comics character Superman fans are probably pretty familiar with, called Maxima. And today we got some information about Maxima casting, which was then debunked, but then we got new information that I think is yet to be debunked that feels like it maybe is closer to the truth. Unless it has been debunked by the time this video comes out, and then this is a video about a moment in time. This Wednesday, what was it like? What did we think was going to happen? And, some of these people might still be on the list in the future. Who knows? Okay, so Maxima. She is an alien. She was introduced in the late 80s. So for Superman, a character that's been around since the 30s, she's a relatively recent addition to the roster. She was introduced as a villain. She's the queen of a planet called Almerac. And basically, it's just a superhuman, kind of like Superman. She has strength, she can fly, she's durable. She also has telepathy, and she doesn't have laser beams and stuff like that. But besides that, somewhat of a match for Superman. And that's what's interesting about her, because she comes to Earth and she's like, hey, I've heard about you, Superman. You're really strong, and you would be a good husband for me. We can have children together, and we can rule Almerac. And Superman's like, oh, listen, that's not how things work here. They fight a little bit. Eventually, Maxima gets redeemed because she's one of those characters who, isn't evil. She just comes from a different society with its own customs around, marriage, and once she understands that, she can reset when she's on Earth and not just force Superman to marry her. I would say there's a couple of characters she's kind of like. For reference, there's two in Marvel. There's Thundra, the Femizon, and Lady Hellbender. Both of them are women that are really strong, muscular, kind of warrior women. All of them have red hair because they're fiery, kind of supermodel types, and they're all big, muscular women. DC's got quite a few of those. We have yet to meet any of them, except maybe the Bride in Creature Commandos. But characters like Wonder Woman or Amazons, right? Big Barda is a really big, tough woman. And then Maxima. I would say those are the three that come to mind. I'm sure there's others. But yes, this archetype exists. The villain who is attracted to the male hero and wants them to be their partner, and the male hero doesn't want anything to do with that. Obviously, it's a little bit of a dated trope, but, it's got the creepiness attached to it. The most recent version of this I can think of in DC Comics is Power Girl, the alternate universe version of Supergirl who lives on Earth. She gets her own Maxima, but it's a guy, and it's a very different story. Because immediately she's like, this guy sucks. I don't like him. Please stop hanging out with me. And over the course of the story, she kind of understands what his deal is. And also, if it turns out if she wants to repopulate his planet, she doesn't have to have his babies or anything. So it's not that same kind of commitment. But anyway, that's a spin on this kind of story. Anyway, there was a DC Comics story called Panic in the Sky. It's a story where Brainiac and Maxima came to Earth with a couple of other characters that it's too complicated to explain. and fought all of the heroes teamed up to fight against them. I am not saying that I think that is what this movie is going to be, but the fact that Brainiac and Maxima are the only two antagonists that we know of so far, and they were in a comic that involved teaming up all of these characters, including some of the ones that we have gotten a lot of play out of, like Guy Gardner is a big player in that book. Obviously Superman, kind of Supergirl, although it's complicated. It just feels right. And also, Maxima stands out among Superman's rogues gallery because I feel like there's maybe like a couple of different tiers of Superman villains. Every big superhero has, like, I would say, tiered villains, right? Superman's got the A tier. That's your Lex Luthors, that's your Brainiacs, that's your Darkseids, and maybe Doomsday I'll throw in there as well. Then he's got a pretty strong B tier, right? That's where you get guys like Parasite, maybe Manchester Black. These are characters who like could be the main antagonist in a Superman story, but you would be surprised if Superman thought they were his arch nemesis. Others, Mongol, Toyman, those guys. Then there's the C tier, and this is where it gets tricky, because a lot of these characters, who are characters who can fight Superman for a comic or two, just aren't incredibly memorable. Like, does anybody have really strong feelings about Reactron? And I feel like part of the problem with these guys is they kind of all blend together. So when you have someone like Maxima who stands out and is just a woman, she has red hair, she has a very specific goal, she makes a big impression in a way that like some of the rest of these guys don't. Like Conduit doesn't matter that much. Now, I don't want to get any hate from the Conduit fans. What's your favorite Conduit story? Put them in the comments if this is comments. If it's on Nebula, then, I don't know, tweet it to me or something. But anyway, that's why I feel like Maxima, while not an A or B lister, does stand out and is a character that is memorable. I'm not surprised we're seeing here. So James Gunn, like he did with Clark and Lois and Lex, seems to be holding rounds of auditions, some sort of in-person meeting with different actors, and the list of the actors have leaked. Now, when we did this the first time, years ago, with the Superman actors, a lot of the names we got were wrong, right? Some of them we would find out later did go out for those roles, but others were just names that were kind of being thrown around, and like maybe somebody at Warner Brothers was like, that would be an interesting one. Some scooper got wind of that, and that made it to the news sites. So like, I'm not saying. I'm guaranteeing these are the 4 finalists. They do feel right, though, specifically for 2 reasons. First reason, I think there's just a couple of actors in here. They feel like more of a specific type of actor than the first group. The first group feels kind of all over the place, although I will say there's an outlier in the last group. But the main reason why I think the last group seems more legit is because James Gunn immediately came out and debunked the first group. The second group has been out there for a while, and I don't think he said anything, and that is the problem with this, James. I love you. If you are going to debunk individual rumors, when you don't debunk one, it makes it clear that that's the truth, which is fine in this case. Like, who cares who's casting who? Like, I mean, we care. This is an important video. Like and subscribe and hype this video. I think hyping is a thing you can do on YouTube now. I don't know. What's going on, YouTube? Anyway, like, I remember when there were rumors that Ultraman was going to be in the movie. Superman, not this new one. And that was going to be a surprise. Like, that leak came up to James Gunn. And James, because you are truthful, like the guy in Labyrinth in The Door and Cannot Lie to You, you said, I believe, something like Lex Luthor is the main villain of this movie, and everybody who read that went, oh, okay. And Ultraman is his henchman or something. That makes total sense. But if you ask James Gunn online, like, hey, is Toyman going to be the bad guy in Superman? You wouldn't say, you'll have to wait and find out. You would say no. So anyway, I love that James Gunn is online, but the fact that he's so honest makes it pretty clear when some of these seem more right. And the second one seems more correct for no other reason than he didn't debunk it, and it came out today at a time like when he would definitely be awake and have his phone. Okay, so here's the first group. This was reported by Deadline, picked up by Nexus Point News, and then James responds to them. They say Marisa Abela, Ella Purnell, and Adria Arjona are testing for the role of Maxima for DC Studios' Man of Tomorrow. And like, let's sit with that one for a while. And this is why I feel like this one doesn't seem super realistic. Marisa Abela, I do remember her because I saw that Black Bag movie. I thought she was pretty good in that. I wouldn't say she's unlike Adria Arjona, like clearly they're from different places, but I can see them playing the same role. Ella Purnell just does not feel like that kind of character. And by that kind of character, I mean kind of a femme fatale, like dangerous woman, right? That's what you get in Black Bag. That's what you get in like Hitman. Adria Arjona has done that very well. And I could see that being how Maxima is introduced in these movies. But like, I don't know, I'm sure Ella Purnell can do it. But Ella Purnell has a very different vibe, Fallout, Arcane, Yellow Jackets. I'm sure she could be in these movies. She would be, let's think. It's a character that Purnell would be good as in DC. I mean, Jinx is kind of Harley Quinn. Obviously, we have a Harley Quinn. But if they wanted to recast Harley Quinn, she'd be a solid Harley Quinn. What else? Like, I think she's too young for Teen Titans, even though in Yellow Jackets, she is playing a child. But that's one of those shows like Stranger Things where you just gotta really suspend your disbelief. Like Fallout, I would say she's like in her mid-20s. I would say that's probably what you would cast her as. Like, I wouldn't say she'd be an amazing Wonder Woman. Honestly, she's not my favorite Zatanna, but I think she could kind of be an interesting Zatanna. And then if you want to pick a Superman villain, Livewire. She's kind of got more of a Livewire identity than like a Maxima identity. That's just me. And Adria Arjona, I suggested her in my most recent video. A lot of people have, to be fair. And there are a lot of reasons, we'll get to it, why I think she is definitely the most likely. But for that reason, I thought that leak was a little dubious. But then James Gunn comes out and says, this is not against Nexus. They're sharing what Deadline reported. But Deadline's reporting is shoddy and incorrect. I've always thought Deadline was pretty thorough in their journalism, but that's not the case here, so I'm frankly disappointed. If someone would have run these names by us, we would have said it's bullshit. I've been friends with Adria a long time, since I cast her in the Belko Experiment. I'm a fan of both Maria and Ella, but I've never met either of them. Crazy. And like, I understand why this must be frustrating for James Gunn, is because on top of having to figure this out, you're having to field all these rumors. I'm sure like Ella Purnell calls you and she's like, hey, James Gunn, do you want me to play this character that I've never spoken to you about and don't know anything about? And like, that's got to be tough to deal with. And it's got to make negotiating difficult, because then if fans like me come up with a favorite, maybe the actor can use that and go like, see, the people really want to see them, so maybe you give them an extra million or something. I don't think it works like that, but I do think that matters. I feel like James Gunn has been pretty A to B when it comes to some of his casting decisions. Superman is played by one of the actors fans really wanted. Jon Stewart is played by one of the actors fans, including myself, like really, really wanted. You know, he picked the Supergirl that was everyone's favorite. And that does mean I think he's going to do that here. But, you know, maybe there's value there. And Deadline answers back, right? They say, Deadline went through its normal editorial process in the news gathering for this story. After a review in light of new information regarding the actors involved, the story is currently being updated. So they take off two of the names, but then they do say, Adria Arjona was among those beginning to test last week. Multiple sources tell Deadline. So they're like, listen, you got us. We were wrong about some of them. But the Adria Arjona one was right, so maybe that's why we got it all confused together. James Gunn hasn't said anything about that, so I have to assume that's kind of true. You know, thinking about it, though, now I'm looking at it like, well, is it possible that those other two actors were, well, I guess because James Gunn said, like, he's never met them, right? If he had said they're not going out for Maxima, I would say, well, maybe they're going out for something else. Because, like, honestly, I don't hate Melissa Abela for a Wonder Woman figure or a Zatanna. Ooh, she'd be a good Zatanna. Or maybe like Black Canary, I don't know. But anyway, so then right after that, Hollywood Reporter drops similar but new and as up until now undebunked information about the casting. They say the finalists are Adria Arjona, here she is again, Ava de Dominici, Sydney Chandler, and Grace Van Patten. Also, when I was doing some research on this, I looked up like Marisa Abela, like what's she been in besides Black Bag, anything else I've seen? And if you look on our IMDb page, it says also, next year, she's going to be in Man of Tomorrow. And I was like, oh, okay. Rumored, but still, that's something. Then I went to the page. All three of the original women are in the rumored still, because IMDb is one of those things, not that anybody can update, but it's like not as official as I feel like it seems. I will say, these four actors, interesting. I don't know too much about two of them. I don't know very much about the third one either, but at least I've seen her in something. And then the fourth one is Adria Arjona, the actor who I assumed would get this role if she wanted it. So let's get the two that I have no information about off the table real quick. Grace Van Patten, I've not seen anything she's in. I didn't watch Nine Perfect Strangers or Maniac. I will say a couple things interesting about her from just looking her up here. New Yorker, I like that. You know, East Coaster. She's real, not like all those phonies from LA. But also, speaking of LA, one of her first roles was in the Sopranos show. She was in like 2 episodes of that. And I was curious, like, why there? And I looked into her family history, and her dad directed some of Sopranos. And then her family is full of people with IMDb profiles. Like, her uncle was the king in Spaceballs. Another one of her uncles was in Psycho, like the original one, not the Vince Vaughn remake. So, you know, that's interesting. Doesn't have any connections to James Gunn work I can see in her IMDb. Sometimes that helps. So I have absolutely no opinion on her. Also, not a redhead. I'm not even convinced this character will be a redhead, and wigs exist, so it doesn't really matter, but moving on. Other actor here that I know nothing about, Ava de Dominici. She is probably most known to at least American audiences from a show called The Cleaning Lady, a show that starred Elektra from the Daredevil show. Look at that. She's in that Balls Up movie that's coming out later this year. She's done a lot of work in Spanish language programming I have not seen. I do think she has more experience than Grace Van Patten, just looking at her credits. Kind of reminds me, funny enough, of another actor who is going to be in Man of Tomorrow, Maria Gabriela de Faria, who plays the engineer. I remember seeing interviews with her where she was talking to some of the other cast members, and she was just like, yeah, I've done this and this and this, and they're like, I had no idea. And it's like, yeah, it's because you didn't grow up watching those shows. I guess I always find it interesting where someone has a huge career in a very specific area, and then goes to a Hollywood blockbuster or TV show or something. Like when Lisa showed up on White Lotus, I was like, oh, she's fine. If I had to guess, I would not have guessed that the most famous person on White Lotus season 3 is Lisa, and that would have sounded insane to anybody who knows who she is. But it's just American audiences are like, oh, she seems nice, I wonder if she's gonna do more movies. I don't know. Anyway, but so Ava de Dominici has worked more, not necessarily in things I've seen. Now moving on to the one I kind of recognize. Speaking of people related to other people, Kyle Chandler, Hal Jordan, has a daughter named Sydney Chandler. Most people are probably familiar with her through the Alien TV show, Alien Earth, where she plays the main kid, whose name is probably Peter Pan or something. Wendy? She's probably Wendy. I can't remember. It's been a while. Everybody on that show is some Peter Pan thing. It was one of those shows that I think I liked while I was watching it, but after the fact, I'm having a hard time deciding if it was good. One of those where I'm like, is this really, really smart or not really, really smart? What am I watching here? Her performance is interesting, I would say, compared to Adria Arjona. Not very Maxima-y. And to be fair to her, she's been in some other stuff. She was in Don't Worry, Darling. She was in that Sugar show. But in Alien Earth, she plays a child's brain put into an adult robot body. So she is supposed to be playing a little kid. Now, I don't know if that's unusual for her, but I do think she does it really well, so I'd kind of assume she kind of skews younger. I don't know if she'd be a good Starfire, but just comparing characters, she's got that kind of naivety, but she's powerful, she's very impulsive. You know who she feels like? Here's 3 characters. Mary Marvel, all right, very wholesome, kind of like Shazam, like the Shazam sister, who was in the Shazam movies, but if they wanted to recast her, I mean, that's the same role, right? A child in an adult's body. Then you've got Dove. I don't think Dove is a terrible pick for her. Dove is very soft-spoken. She's a fighter, but she's the peaceful one in the Dove and Hawk relationship. She was on that live-action Titans show, so that's probably where a lot of people are familiar with her from. Phantom Girl, I think she'd actually be a great Phantom Girl. I also think Ella Purnell would be a great Phantom Girl, because Phantom Girl is very spacey, very weird. She's one of the 2 uncast members of the Terrifics, so if they decide to do that, because they have 2 of them already, and it does seem like, they might do it, I think she would be great for that. I do think also James Gunn likes to cast his friends, and that's kind of what Palm Clement, if I feel is although she'd be an interesting Starfire, actually. I didn't bring this up in my video, but actually she could kind of do that. Another character that Sydney Chandler could be, Ice. Ice is Russian. I don't know if she does accents, but Ice is also kind of out there, ethereal. She's some sort of Nordic god. I can't remember exactly what her details are. I know I just said she has a Russian accent, but it's one of those areas. Cold, not America. Who knows what? I don't know. I don't know maps. I know which one's Greenland and which one's Iceland, so there's that. But I don't know. Just looking at these 4, Sydney Chandler feels like the odd man out here. And I don't think she can't do this, but I can't think of anything Maxima that does feel oh, right, that version of her is kind of what Sydney Chandler, is known to play. But she's good in Alien Earth. So I don't think she would be a terrible choice. It would just be, she feels like she would be the kind of strange one. Because then you get Adria Arjona, who I think on the drive over here, because I went to get some popcorn from the movie theater, because I do that sometimes, they have 1,000,000 points in the popcorn pass at AMC. And I don't know, I just like it better than regular popcorn. I think I came up with 6 reasons why it's probably Adria Arjona. First one, she was on both lists, and she's the only person that was on both lists. So there seem to be people that know that she is auditioning for this or reading for this, and are kind of sure about some other people, but maybe it's because she's come in a couple of times. So there's that, number 1. Number 2, she knows James Gunn. Like he said in that response, she worked on the Belko Experiment. That was a movie he wrote. That was apparently her first big movie. She has credited her career to James Gunn in interviews, which, isn't to say she's not responsible, but for just that break was her big break, I guess. So she worked well with him there. Also, and this isn't that important, but it does feel like it's more important than you'd expect, she is dating, or at least was last time I checked on this, Jason Momoa, who plays Lobo in Supergirl, and also seems to be a gun friend. And while I think this is a process, right? I also think if you're at dinner with James Gunn and you're one of his friends and you're hey, you should make me Lobo. he'll go, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And then that's all. Like, I'm sure that's not everybody, but it does kind of feel like that's some of it. The same way that, like, Glenn Powell apparently just willed his way into the Mario movie by being like, you should put Star Fox in it, and you should make me Star Fox. And then, like, he did. So I think there's a non-zero chance that James Gunn was out to dinner with Jason and Adria just said, hey, I saw that Maxima character in Man of Tomorrow. I think I'd be good for that. And then he was like, you probably would. Let's say, maybe, we'll do some testing, but, like, actually, I kind of like that now. 4, and this is very important, easily the highest profile of these 4 actors. Like, and of the other 2 as well, of all 6, Adria Arjona is the only one that I can think of that has, like, headlined a movie. She was in Hitman along with Star Fox's own Glenn Powell. She was in Blink twice. I thought she was very good in that. I thought she was fine in Hitman. I just didn't love the movie Hitman. But Blink twice was the role where I was like, oh, this is a movie star. Like, she is going to be all over movies in the future. And, like, she should be where, like, Scarlett Johansson was 10 years ago. Yeah, she was funny in that Splitsville movie that I liked last year. Obviously, she's great on Andor. And then she was in Morbius, so she can work under really annoying conditions. That's really important. Her and James Gunn probably have interesting conversations about Jared Leto, because James Gunn said some stuff about Jared Leto before, which only makes me love James Gunn more. So that's reason number 4. Reason number 5, her name has been floating around for a while when it comes to a lot of these characters. I would say, without any information actually being out there on what they're looking for with a Wonder Woman, she seems like she's also maybe the front runner for that. Just based on speculation, who the fans want. And again, does it matter? Not necessarily. But, like, the fans did want David Corenswet. The fans wanted Aaron Pierre. The fans wanted Millie Alcock. Well, maybe she wasn't, like, as much of a pick before the fact. But, like, the fans wanted Jason Momoa Lobo. The fans wanted Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. A lot of these casting decisions in the new DCU are what you would expect. I don't think that's a bad thing. But it is, like, at this point, I would say the biggest impediment to whether Adria Arjona is Maxima is whether or not she wants to be Wonder Woman. Because I feel like she might be like, no, I'd rather wait. I know you got taking a little time off from Wonder Woman, that's fine. I'd rather do that. And then, give somebody else the Maxima role for now. Like, obviously, I don't know this for a fact, but out of all of the actors that people have suggested for Wonder Woman, Adria Arjona seems like the most obvious one. 6th reason I think Adria Arjona is probably the most likely, and honestly, this is the most important one. Well, maybe it's not more important than, like, knowing James Gunn. That one seems very helpful. But this one, Hitman, that movie, if you haven't seen it, it is about a woman who is like a dangerous, sexy woman who meets a guy who's doing weird undercover cop disguise work, and like it's supposed to kind of be realistic, but like who thinks this is a guy? Maybe people do think this is a guy, and it has a really weird ending. I did not love it. But in it, she plays a character that feels very Maxima-y. Like, she's supposed to be flirty, sexy, dangerous, powerful. Like, I think original Maxima, right? She shows up, tries to be a little bit seductive with Clark, maybe tries to get in Clark's business. Maybe that's part of Brainiac's plan. He's like, you go, flirt with Clark. And then, when that ruins his relationship, when he's all off balance, then I'd come kill him. Like, you wouldn't need for her to do that, right? Like, that's not, like, I don't think that's the only role that she can provide. But if you want a Maxima to do that, Adria Arjona is perfect for it. Yeah, and just, like I said, I think she is a movie star unlike any of the rest of them. Like, Ella Purnell, I guess, is the second highest profile one of these. But, like, and I don't know if this is necessarily true. I think with Ella Purnell, you could describe her as the girl from Fallout. And people go, oh, right, yeah, I've seen that show. I know who you're talking about. I think maybe by now, with Adria Arjona, you could say to a lot of people, Adria Arjona, like the actor. And people go, oh, right, yeah, I saw Andor. I don't know, just feels like she's kind of higher profile. But that could be a bad thing, right? Maybe she wants more money than some of these other people because she is more of a name, especially with nerds because of the Andor connection. Although between Arcane and Fallout, I feel like Ella's got her beat there. I don't know. I think there's plenty of other actors that can do it. In my other video, I suggested Karen Gillan just because she is tall and redhead and action hero. But like looking at these people and looking at my other video where I kind of liked her there too, Adria Arjona feels right. And like with the Superman casting, if you said, what kind of animal has 4 legs and a mane and hooves, and someone said, oh, obviously zebras, you'd be like, well, no, horses, right? This is a weird comparison. This one doesn't work either. There's a phrase that like, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And sometimes that's what these are. So we'll see. I have a feeling we'll find out pretty soon because like last time this happened, it is something that once it's at this stage, they make a decision. I hope whoever we get is good, and I hope it's an interesting take on Maxima, because she's a cool Superman villain, and she's, like I said, one of a couple of women in Superman's rogues gallery. So, I hope they do her justice. like looking at that movie, it's interesting how many of the characters in it are aliens. Like Clark, her, unless she looks very different, but like usually humanoid alien, Supergirl, like kind of hot girl. She's a reincarnated space thing. But it reminds me of a video I watched recently by a YouTuber who I really like. And it's part of a new series that they just started. It's called Showrunners. It's by Captain Midnight. And the series, which so far is, there's one of them, so this is probably what it seems like they are. It's about different people that have created an iconic television show. And like the reason Aliens came to mind is because frequently that is either the twist or just the plot of everybody's favorite sci-fi anthology, The Twilight Zone, which I have seen episodes of The Twilight Zone. I think it's interesting. I knew next to nothing about Rod Serling. So much next to nothing that I thought his name was Rod Serling. And when I saw Rod Serling on the video title screen, I was like, I gotta fix that. And then I looked it up and I was like, nope, I don't know where I got that from. He's a fascinating person. The video talks about his whole life, how he dealt with censorship, he was a playwright before he made this, and how some of his values made their way into the Twilight Zone. It's a very good video. I'm very excited for more of them. And you can find that exclusive video along with tons of other exclusive videos and all of my videos early and ad-free on this video sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is, say it with me, a subscription streaming service that I and a bunch of other really cool people helped create. Nebula has evolved so much over the last 7 years. Sure, you can still watch all my videos early and ad-free. You can watch videos by a bunch of other creators you probably already love. But one of the most exciting things about Nebula is our original programming. Tom Scott has a new series called England, where he goes to every English county to find something interesting. You should check out this first episode where Tom Scott goes to Leicestershire and he visits a bell making factory. You see the entire process, learn how bells are made, and it is not how you would expect, especially since this bell making factory is hundreds of years old and they're still working with some of the same techniques from a century ago. Tom Scott even gets to use a sledgehammer to break one of the bells a little, because shockingly, it's hard to do. It's hard to use a sledgehammer to break an enormous bell. And each episode of England is going to be on Nebula for a week before it goes anywhere else. On top of that, we got a series that I love watching called Abolish Everything, where someone, maybe a comedian, maybe another YouTuber, makes an argument for something that should be abolished. They state their case, they make a very funny PowerPoint, the political establishment gets to weigh in, and then the audience decides what deserves to actually be abolished. This week they did the championship for the second season. They had a ton of really funny people on it. I've never been on that show, maybe sometime in the future. I think I'd be a fun abolitionist. And then later this year, although hopefully not too much later, Nebula's first original dramatic scripted series, Subliminal, comes out with the episode that I wrote, which I cannot wait for you guys to watch. Nebula is the best way to support all of the creators you already love and all the creators you don't know you're going to love, but then you're going to love them when you see them on Nebula. You can also download the videos to your phone, which saves you data when you're not at home. And there are not AI videos on Nebula, so this isn't going to be like YouTube where you go on and you watch a video in a minute or two and you're like, something's off here, and then you realize like, oh, this video is AI. Which happens on YouTube and other platforms way more than I would like to admit. Nebula, we all got real stuff made by real creators, and that's why it's great. And a year of Nebula is already a steal at $60 a year, $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for just $30. That is $2.50 a month. It is an amazing deal. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you around.